Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the JESS MARSHALL Podcast. This week, I'm very excited to have on the brainfluencer from Instagram, Dr. Michelle Eisenmann. She is a concussion expert. She's got personal experience with traumatic brain injuries herself. I think she's going to be a really interesting podcast to sit down and have today. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you guys after. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the JESS MARSHALL Podcast. Wow. Mark that swipe. Bring it. How long ago was it that you set up your Instagram handle, which by the way, any of you guys who don't know, it's at the brain influencer. So that's how I found you. Yes. Is on Instagram. So we were talking about this a little before we started recording. What was the motivation behind that? You said it was kind of like a joke to begin with.
So it was because there was a specific time that in social media that influencers became a real thing, and then it was like the boom of influencers, and I was really into my studies at that point, and I always thought, man, it would be so cool to see accounts that actually talked about the stuff I'm learning about more than some of the other stuff. I mean, I learned a lot about other things in life, like how to home improvement and how to, DIYs, and that was great. So I figured I'm going to be an influencer. And I was like, I'm going to be a brain influencer because I influence brains. Yeah. And so that's kind of how that came to be. And then after a while, I had people start reaching out of nowhere. Some people that follow me, some people that don't, but I do actually get a lot of people reach out asking questions, and it stuck. And then I figured I'm married to it because I can't change it now.
I'm impressed. It's how I found you. So good for you. Keep at it. Okay. I know it's tough to keep up with that social media when you're running your own thing sometimes, or when you're getting started. Yeah. I know you work at a clinic and you're helping build the team there, but what got you into just the general overall field of chiropractic in the first place? What got you interested in that?
I have a very long family history of neurologic diseases, illnesses, whatever you want to say. So I have my mother and two of my aunts have something called Charcot-Marie tooth, and my mom is a cancer survivor, multiple cancers. So throughout her whole life, childhood, young adult, etc. And so I was very fascinated with the aspect of quality of life because I didn't feel like she had very much quality of life. Most of doctors' visits that are healers, you would go to, and it was, I will check the basics and I'll see you in 6 months. But I don't think I ever saw a practitioner say, how are you doing? How is your day to day? Are you enjoying your life? How can this get better? And so that's how I got into healthcare to begin with. And I had a very big desire to become a neurologist because at that point in time, I was very narrow-minded on that there's only one way to become a healer. And I had a neurologist and a physiatrist that are from Dallas that actually, I was shadowing them, and they said, you know what, if we had a chance to do this again, I would. So this is not what I would like to do for the rest of my life.
No kidding. Yeah,
and so at first I took it like any young person would, offensively, because I was like, they just don't want me to be this. Sure. And so, which is not true. So I actually spent some time reflecting. And I guess if there's anyone out there wondering how, I want to be in healthcare, but I don't know where to begin, the best thing that you can think about is what kind of demographic of people do you want to help, and what are the tools that you want to help with? What are those tools? Is it medication-wise? Is it supplement? Is it nutritional? Is it movement dynamic? And so I really started to think about what are the things that have been impactful to me being a person in sports and seeing my mother's and aunt's limited mobility. I figured movement was something that I really enjoyed. And so I found through my search, functional neurology online. And I saw a video of a doctor that helped a kid that had a concussion from a sports injury, soccer specifically. And this kiddo, had a really big response, very abnormal considering the amount of force that he had. And I saw through non-invasive therapies how he was able to return back to play. And I figured that's quality of life. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I wish someone would have done for my family. so that's how I got into the field. And while being in the field, I had some self-discoveries about my own health, which was fun.
Yeah, you said when I reached out to you there on direct message that you've got some traumatic brain injury past as well.
Yeah.
So you see your loved ones struggling with their health growing up. You're like, I want to be able to help people like that. And then what happened to you?
So I did sports, and I have fallen quite a few times, crashed into maybe a glass door once or twice. And so out of things, I have a big past with mold exposure as well, and other kind of viruses and things as well, which we know can affect the brain. But physically, sports, I would say, and falls have been the primary. But much like anyone else that's had a concussion, they're like, well, I look fine. I'm fine. I mean, nothing dramatic, or because you have the word trauma in there. So you believe it's traumatic,
Right.
but it doesn't actually have to be like that, And so for me, it was definitely not like that. So I think I would like people to start framing their brains to be more function based. Like, how well am I functioning? Not so much as the event in itself. And so years and years down the path that I started getting into this aspect of functional neurology, I was actually doing a little bit of an internship in a clinic, and I had a colleague of mine that was older and had a lot more knowledge, wanted to show us one of the diagnostic materials. And so he said, I need someone to be my guinea pig, and I just had a close relationship with the person, so I said, I'll be the guinea pig. And so he starts testing and starts seeing, like, oh, your eyes, there's something wrong here. Your eyes are actually not moving like they're supposed to. Your balance is nowhere. For a cheerleader and a volleyball player, like, that's nowhere where it's
Wow, this
supposed
is
to
how
be.
you found out that you had multiple.
So I had no idea that
Really?
I thought, well, people struggle through life. Life is a struggle. And then
What types of things were you struggling with? Like sleep and.
I definitely had dysautonomia, so I struggled a lot with going from laying and sitting to standing. I would have like blackout curtains kind of come and go. I definitely had a lot of gut issues. Concentration and focus was a big deal to me. I do remember, having, yes, I have my husband and my old roommate would probably laugh at this, but if I had to study, I had to be in a cold, dark room, really focused, really things had to be a specific way.
So almost like attention deficit type of, maybe not that exact.
Word finding, memory was a big deal. I
Wow.
do remember that at one point I did go to a doctor's office, and I figured something was really wrong, but I couldn't tell what, because I didn't remember how to write my name. Like, I knew my name and I knew how to put it into action. I could tell you what my name was, but it's like I was looking at the paper and I was like, how do I
Okay,
do I
so how
write
old
that?
are you when you stand up and say, I'll be your guinea pig, and these tests start going down? And
I think I was around 23.
so 23, and you think these sports injuries started happening probably like early into your teens, or maybe
Teens.
even before that? I mean, we're all playing sports when we're 8, 9, 10, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not quite at the rate of speed that you start to pick up when you get a little into those advanced, maybe select volleyball or select cheerleading or whatever. Everyone starts getting bigger and faster, and then the collisions start happening
Yeah.
at a higher rate. So you probably struggled with this, you think, for like 10 years without knowing what was going on, just thinking like,
It's normal. It should be normal. Like, I thought.
I don't think not knowing how to write your name is normal.
Yes. At that point, I was
had,
already like, okay. And at
Were
that
you going
point,
downhill?
Yes, very
Okay.
fast.
Okay.
I started develop because then these brain processes can become very metabolic. And so you can see a lot of females specifically end up having something called PCOS, like polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Okay.
which is something that I got diagnosed with. That, a lot of people have many opinions about it. A lot of practitioners say like, oh, well, you're not overweight. You don't have this and that. But my laboratory diagnostics to some people sometimes were fine, and then sometimes they looked at it and they're like, something's not fine. So there's a lot of fluctuation because that eventually can turn metabolic. And so that's where my attention was grabbed first, that I needed help with something because my metabolic health started plummeting.
How were you able to tell that?
Well, if anyone has had polycystic ovarian syndrome and has had a cyst rupture, there is no, it's almost like an appendix.
Wow.
Because I've had my appendix
Right.
rupture, and it almost feels the same way. And so there's nothing normal about that. But at that point in time, I think the biggest struggle, which I'm sure other athletes struggle with this as well, is that I was a straight A student. So in my personal life, there's not really much that you could have told on, oh yeah, like you see a clear pattern of what you see on TV, that it's like, failing in school,
Depressed.
isolation,
Yeah.
like you don't have to be like that. I've always been a type A person.
Yeah.
I've always had a mother that I've had to kind of take care of. So I've always been go, to the point that I actually went to a practitioner one time, and they said, if you don't change, like you have like beginnings of Graves' disease. So metabolically, I was all jacked up. And part of that was because of my brain not moving and functioning the way it should, because brain connection with hormones, connection with blood sugar regulation, it is all a cascade.
Yeah.
Right? So
The brain's running the body. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about a computer, the body is the hardware, the brain's the software. Mm-hmm. And before we started shooting, we were talking about how people don't necessarily think about that. I mean, I think mental health and wellness is coming more to the fore, maybe through social media, maybe just through, hey, we all see the effect that lots of concussions are having on older athletes after they retire or whatever. But you're talking about, realizing that you have this problem and trying to figure out how to solve it. But most people walk around and they're like, my brain's fine. Like you thought, this is just how I have to live my life.
yeah.
If somebody is struggling with some of the things you talked about or some of the things I talk about, which is like continuous migraines, forgetting where you are, going on a drive and then ending up 5 counties over, all these types of things have happened to me.
So I am so familiar with that one.
Sleeplessness.
Yeah.
For me, massive anxiety, major depression, all these things that once I turned like 30, 32, 33, I was just like, man, I don't know. I can't see doing this for another like 5 years, let alone 10 or 25 or trying to have kids.
Yeah.
But I just thought that it was just a me problem. I didn't realize it was a brain problem. Is that a story that repeats itself pretty often in your practice? You meet people who are, my wife thinks I'm nuts. I don't know what's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. Can you help me? Is that usually kind of how it goes?
Yes. I see veterans and I see civilians. What I see in the veteran population, thankfully, because there's a lot of camaraderie and there's a lot of speaking with each other, is that a buddy will tell a buddy that will tell a buddy, hey man, no, I see it. This is what's going on. And so there's a little bit more awareness, I would say, in that aspect. It can be better, but there's a problem with the acceptance part because you're, top of the top, you're very physically fit. I mean, we're that person that went and did those incredible things for your country. And so the acceptance portion of like what I see in the mirror doesn't necessarily match what I feel is there. In the civilian population, I see a lot more of the, man, I am just lost. I have a myriad of different symptoms and I just don't even know how they connect. And I keep going to X person and X person and X person, and no one can tell me how this is related, and I'm going downhill fast.
What, if you could sum it up, what's the difference between a neurologist and a functional neurologist? You wanted to be a neurologist. You go shadow these neurologists. They tell you, hey, if we could do it all differently, this is what we would have done. You kind of recoiled at that, but then rethought about it. What's the difference between the two?
I actually love that question because that's where a lot of confusion comes in. And I feel like there's a lot of patients out there that are very upset with their neurologists, which at a point in time I say, well, you can't be upset with someone if that's not their toolbox. And that's what I said in the beginning. You have to find out what tools you want to help people with. And they have some very beneficial tools that can help at specific points in time, but you can't ask them to do something that they didn't train for a career for. And so I want to start at neurosurgeon.
Yep.
So neurosurgeon is that person that if you've had a head injury, you really want them to check out if there's a brain bleed, is there a tumor, is there anything in there that needs some snipping, because let's be real, I can't Houdini some stuff in and out of that. And so we got to know, like, are we ruling out pathology, right? Yeah. So then you go to the neurologist or neurohospitalist. And so that's the doctor that's going to help a lot with medication. And so do you need medication? And the reality is that it's so individualized. Some people may need medication for a short period of time for X amount of thing. Some people may not. Some people may just be able to start nutraceutically and be able to...
What does that mean?
Supplements.
Okay.
Some people may go from a less aggressive intervention to a more aggressive intervention. And so the neurologist is going to be very good at being able to look medication-wise, maintaining medication, and even potentially doing some diagnostics for pathology.
Okay.
Now, a functional neurologist, we're not necessarily dealing with pathology. We're dealing with functions of the brain.
Define pathology for those of my viewers and listeners who aren't like totally up to...
I guess I'm thinking more like tumor, like something a little bit more, not activities of daily living. Mm-hmm. Like we're talking about maybe, and some, I know
severe, like invasive.
Something that would be a little bit more invasive. And to an extent, you can work with a functional neurologist and a neurologist side by side. It doesn't mean that you have to have either or, because if a person has MS and they have their neurologist but are still getting training with functional neurology, MS is one of those things that's considered, kind of a big deal, has a label, a diagnosis. However, you can have both practitioners help you, and it depends on your goals.
Okay.
So even a person diagnosed with a, degenerative disease such as Parkinson's can have their primary neurologist, but still be working alongside a functional neurologist to enhance their quality of life and make things better and be able to bring about neuroplasticity. Right?
So flexibility, when you say neuroplasticity, you're talking about the brain's
ability to adapt.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the brain is able to adapt. And so that's where functional neurology comes in, is I'm more interested in seeing like things that I know that your brain should do, like cranial nerve testing, for example. Do you have a gag response? Can you smile? Is everything symmetrical? How's your balance? How's your eye movements? How is your cognition? So everything that really is activity of daily living plus function-based, that I'm like, I know that this system of the brain should do this. Does it do it? And does it do it efficiently and symmetrically?
Okay.
So that's now a different side that we're looking at things, because I'm trying to see what works, what doesn't, what are your goals, and how can we make that better.
So those tests that first revealed to you that you had an issue.
Yes.
Do you repeat those tests, or do you have variations of those tests that you put your patients through at your practice?
Yes. So all the tests really depend on what is your primary complaint. Okay. Because we're not going to waste anyone's time if I don't specifically believe I need to look at something, and if it's not really part of their goal process, right? It's not a cookie cutter process. But if I had a classic presentation of someone that had a concussion, it's a kind of an extensive process. You would fill out paperwork, you would come in, it's about an hour history, and we talk everything from sleep to nutrition to past medical history to family to genetics to about everything that we can know about you. Do a bedside neurological exam, which tests a lot of different things such as, can you feel this? Does it feel the same side to side? Reflexes, strength, etc. And then we jump into, okay, out of these findings, what diagnostic tests do we think are going to be the best? Typically, if it's a straightforward concussion, we want to look at cognitive assessments. We want to look at eye movement assessments because eyes are completely related to brain function. And then we want to look at balance because balance is made out of 3 different systems that are integrated in the brain. And so from all of that giant picture plus laboratory diagnostics, because I want to know, is your brain metabolizing things correctly? Is what is going on with your hormones?
So you're running a blood panel on
people
just to get a full picture, like you said, of what we're up against and what are your expectations and goals. You said that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned before we went on that it's very important for people to understand that all concussions are not created equally. Therefore, all treatment plans, how could they be equal? I feel like as humans, we all look around and we go, maybe being a vegan, that everyone should do that. Maybe being a carnivore, everyone should do that, right? But we don't understand that something a little different probably works a little different for every single one of us because we're all made a little different, depending on how faith-based you are or whatever. I mean, I believe we were created. I don't believe there's any other way to explain how crazy and smart and intelligent and evil and devious and cruel and kind and compassionate humans can be, other than to say there was a greater power involved. How important is it, though, for people to understand that having a tailored recovery plan is very important to them, not just a cookie cutter, you fall in this category, this is what we do. And that 1 hour, that interview you spend, maybe I bet you go over that sometimes, over an hour with some of your people. How does that compare with what you see in conventional medicine in terms of the intake? It's a couple of questions, slot you, categorize you, treat you, move you on, bring in the next one. Yours sounds much more personal.
Yeah, it has to be, because a great example right now, I have some patients in the clinic that are specifically veterans, is I have, they all have similar types of injuries caused by blast exposures. So we're now knowing that the impact of the injury they have is about the same. But I have one person that is struggling a lot more with something more tailored towards a movement disorder. Another person that's struggling a little bit more towards autonomic dysregulation. Another person that's struggling a little bit more towards balance. And so even though they all had very similar injuries acquired about the same time, their brains and bodies are responding differently.
Wow.
And so whatever system may be online for this guy may not be online for that one. And so even though it looks on paper like it would be the same, like same diagnosis code, same this and that, it can be very different.
What's autonomic dysregulation?
That's something that I'd like to throw in there too, because people have heard the word POTS or dysautonomia. And so all that means is a fancy word for dys means dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
And so concussions usually, not always for all people, but usually go hand in hand with dysautonomia and POTS, which is something else that I'm seeing in the community a lot.
How does that reveal? How do you see that in yourself? How do you know you have that if you're a person?
Well, a big indicator, which is not diagnostic, so you have to see a practitioner for this, but if you believe you're struggling with that a little bit, is kind of what I told you about the going from laying to standing and having that kind of curtain fall type, like, ooh, oh my gosh. So blood pressure.
A lot of people call that a head rush, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nothing normal about that. There's nothing. You shouldn't have curtains, or people say, oh, you just stood up a little bit too fast. Yeah. There's no such thing.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Someone spoke from the heavens.
Yeah, that's I should have told you that's
Sorry,
so
I
Hill
realized
from
I didn't talk yet.
the usually we test
This
the
is really hitting.
usually we test the volume so that you don't get scared like that, but I was saving that just for you. No. What explain that, man? So you like go to get out of bed in the middle of the night to go get some Greek yogurt or something and you pass out?
I don't late night snack anymore, but it's very intermittent.
Liar.
It's very intermittent. It'll show up like a couple times a month or something, or like there's a period of my life where it happens a lot, and then it won't.
Come
I don't
see
know.
me.
Yeah. What's the period of your life? Like a time of year?
I don't know. Yeah, like I'd say like a couple months out of the year.
Oh, but it might not be just like it might not be like the Thanksgiving holiday.
No, but
It's different.
I mean, it happens constantly throughout the year. A couple of months, it's worse. But yeah, you stand up and like can't
Yeah, sounds
stood
like
up too fast.
Sounds like you need to beeline it for Capel, Texas, brother.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be sending everybody from up here your way. What do you think you think he hit his head somewhere along the way?
I don't know. I guess because and that can have so many different sources,
Yeah.
right? It could be viral, it could be bacterial, it could be hypoxic, like lack of oxygen. It could be concussion based, head injury based. So I guess for him, I'd have to sit and figure out, okay, where is this coming from? And sometimes where is it coming from really does give us, okay, how do we attack it? But a lot of the times it's more of, okay, how can we figure out what's going on right now?
So you would get into Sohail's his hereditary, his grandparents' health, his parents' health. Is there any family history?
Yeah,
things
everything.
of that nature.
If it past infections, past
Right.
everything. So, yeah.
People don't understand how bad it is to breathe mold. You scanned over that when you were talking about some of the things that you've been through in your life.
Yeah.
When I went and got all of my brain tests done and kind of found out what the trouble I was in, I mean, an hour was spent on that subject. Have you ever worked? And I was like, yes, I'm a contractor, but have you ever lived? Have you ever slept somewhere where you knew there was a leaky roof? Or what is breathing the mold? When you're asleep, usually you're breathing through your nose. Mm-hmm. Obviously, nose straight to brain. I mean, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why you do the good drugs that way, right? It's just straight effect.
Yeah.
So if you're breathing mold in, what is that doing to your brain? What happens when you do that? When you breathe in mold spores?
Mold spores, much like other pathogens, can be very destructive because they attack your immune system. And so one thing that we need to understand is very simple. If your immune system is being constantly attacked by a low-grade infection of whatever kind, you're not going to have enough energy for brain process. So if there is a little bit too much going on here and you're constantly trying to put out a low fire, your brain isn't going to have all the ATP or energy production that it needs to make brain cells fire appropriately or adapt appropriately, like neuroplasticity. And so my biggest issue with some of that is, you going through life, I do believe there's some people that are a little too obsessed with it, and we can't avoid pathogens. They're everywhere. Mold is everywhere. Parasites are everywhere. Viruses are everywhere. But you need to live a life conducive to lowering the counts of infection in your immune system to fight that off so that your brain can have also the rest of the energy too. Because keep in mind, your body, I agree with you. I think we were created. It's just such an intelligent process that I will say, okay, I have two fires and I need to put them out at once. So take a person with a concussion that has a low chronic infection constantly. That brain can't heal because it's being robbed of energy because all of the nutrients, even if you're eating the healthiest ever, all of those vital nutrients are going to fight whatever immune process is going, because it doesn't matter that you remember things very well as much as can you make it till the next day? Is that pathogen going to take a hold of you? You know what I mean? So if you start thinking about your brain as your best friend, And it's like, I want you to be successful, but I'm going to need to prioritize things in order for you to be successful.
Sure.
It will start taking away things. And so energy is one of the first things that goes away. It kind of goes more into you need to rest, or, hey, I can only give you about this amount of energy for you to focus and do that efficiently, because the rest of it needs to go over here so that I can heal the immune system.
Or just, like you said, survive, get you to the end of the day. Let's be clear. I'm really dialed in on concussions and TBIs, but it's very possible that something that's affecting Sohail could be hereditary. Mm-hmm. It could be something that he breathed. It could be any number of things. We're not only talking about brain health as it pertains to concussions today. We're talking about the whole shooting match here.
Yep.
Anything and everything that could mess your brain up, it all starts with your brain.
What about the gut? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was my next question. No, this is why we vibe. So you said that when you were figuring out all your issues that you knew you had some sort of gut issue.
Yeah.
And you talk to a lot of holistic people, biohackers, etc. They're always like, man, if you can get your gut squared away, it's going to fix your depression because your gut sends signals straight to your brain, so on and so forth. Do you believe that your gut went bad before you had brain trauma, or vice versa, or maybe the same time? Does one cause the other?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So
A complicated answer. I love it.
Yes.
Let's go.
Can you have brain trauma leading to gut issues? Yes. Can you have gut issues leading to brain issues? Yes. Can you have both happening at the same time leading to mutual destruction? Absolutely. And so I often get the question of like, well, which one do I work on first? Do I work on my gut or do I work on my brain? And the reality is first we got to see I always go back to goals. What are your goals and what is the active process happening right now to see if there's one that it's like we need to make that a priority, or can we work on both of them simultaneously a little bit? Because in reality, we can stair step things into something. But yes, gut, and if brain's not happy, gut's not happy, and vice versa, there is just that inherent connection. And unfortunately, food processes nowadays are so bad. I was laughing the other day because I went to go get some electrolytes.
Oh, no.
And I saw right next to it some Skittles.
Yeah.
Like branded electrolytes.
But did you get the, oh, really?
Like, it looked like it. I don't know if it was electrolytes, but it was like some sort of powder that you put into your drink.
We have that in the green room.
No way.
Ryan bought it. Yeah, it's just aspartame with flavoring.
Terrible.
Yeah, coloring. And
how can you measure gut unwellness other than I don't feel well, I'm always fighting bloat, or I have heartburn, or what? How do you measure that? How do you know?
That's a great question.
Other than you taking a lab to see, how's your gut check?
Bowel movements are a huge one. Mm-hmm. Do you err on the side of constipation or diarrhea?
Okay.
Do you even go to the bathroom daily?
Right.
Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not constipated," and then I go, "How often do you go?" It's like every 3 days.
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow! What the hell?
So you should be going every day, more than once a day, and so you can, that is a source of constipation. So gut issues can be a lot of that, and other than the bloating and stuff. I know that some of those are going to be a little bit more lab markers that we need to look for as well, because there is some stuff that can be very insidious that you may think like, oh, I'm fine. I don't have anything going on, much like the concussion. But then you have some low-level processes that eventually start damaging some of the nerve plexuses that are around there. A lot of people don't realize that, for example, gallbladder issues. By the way, your gallbladder has a lot to do with your gut. Because, we need stuff to come out to be able to emulsify things, and be able to create digestion and push things out. Best thing about digestion is that we remove and excrete toxins. Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize that they actually have a gallbladder that is trending more towards having stones. Because it happens years in the making. And so they're not doing, it's not something that right away, or you have very low stomach acid and you just don't know. So a lot of it has to be, you have to lead that healthy lifestyle to kind of be okay with, and if you start having symptoms, then you can go back and get it more effectively checked. But with gut stuff, sometimes it really is just about making the best choice for your gut, even though you don't see the immediate response.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
When
The
you're
Skittles.
talking about, she brought them in, the Skittles electrolytes.
Is that...
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into an ad, but
Is that what you saw?
An electrolyte? Is
Singles to go. I don't know.
I
What's
guess
it
it's
say?
just a flavoring. Yeah, it's just for flavor. It's just for fun. It's not an
Low-calorie drink
electrolyte.
mix.
Yeah.
I would assume putting anything in your drink
Put
that's
that away.
made by a candy company is probably not going to do you the most favors.
I used to love them so much.
Oh, I
used to
can't
love
believe
them
it.
so much.
Did you ever have the ones in the yellow bag, the bright side Skittles? They were out like maybe 3 years ago.
No, I stick to the OG and I like grape.
Okay. Those were crazy. And as I started to figure out nutrition more and more, I would eat those and I would get so sick, man.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, this isn't even worth it. They were,
Oh,
those,
God.
the bright side Skittles. And you can only get them on Amazon now. I don't really know how I know that because I've tried to cut all.
Why do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I think I was trying to find them for a nephew or something for his birthday. And I was like, I know. I know. Oh, most everything else at his birthday party was like vegetables, hummus, fruit. My brother and his wife, the way they feed their kids is awesome.
Yeah.
Like their favorite like junk food is grapes. I mean,
Oh,
it's
that's
legit.
fun.
Oh, I know it. It's awesome. It's so refreshing because now that I know what I know about nutrition, it like all starts there. Fitness, wellness, everything for me starts and ends with nutrition and those decisions.
Yeah.
If you could break down what leads to most gut disorders, like summarize it. I'm not saying like oversimplify it, but if you were to summarize what you see and what's caused it, how would you summarize that?
In the brain perspective, like I said earlier, if you have a brain issue, you can almost guarantee that if you don't have a gut issue yet, you will. It's just it is going to happen, especially if you don't do anything about it. But I would say as a society, it really is just our eating habits and our sleep habits really mess with our gut, because you have these people that are in brain, just letting you know, if I had to choose one thing that I'm like, this is the one thing that you can start doing for yourself, it's have good sleep hygiene. It has to be number one.
What do you mean by that?
Not, looking at your phone before bed. Making
That's
sure.
why you said you practice what you preach about social media and screen time.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's not like I'm perfect. It's not like I don't look something, especially if I have to set an alarm, because usually that's the one thing I do sometimes. But it really is
Gotta
something.
get a daylight alarm. Have you ever heard of those?
I actually just got a light bulb that I hooked up to an app that if I'm going to wake up, it just automatically turns on.
Okay.
So I am going to start doing that.
That's
so
interesting.
I'm pretty
Does it turn
excited
all the
about
way
it.
on?
Yeah. Yeah, it can. Which would wake me up, which would mimic the sun for me. Not 100% the sun, but way better than being in pitch black darkness while your alarm's going off.
The super loud alarm, like the tornado siren.
No way.
Like I can't. That stresses me out.
No.
Like I can't. Like when I see that on show. Like I was watching some Better Call Saul, and that's how he wakes up. It's with the old school hotel alarm. That would.
Especially if you already live in that, how people call sympathetic dominance.
Yeah, like fight or flight.
Fight or flight? No way.
If that light bulb doesn't work, or you don't like it, let me know, because I found this. It's called Hatch. It's on Amazon. Hatch, send me a check. And you can choose the light. So at night, I set it on red light, because red light's supposed to help you, calm you, work on your parasympathetic, all of that. In the morning, you can set the color, and then it will go from dim to bright. And then I sleep with the noisemaker, and the noisemaker will slowly
Dampen.
turn off,
That's
which
nice.
that wakes me up usually more than the light does, which is so weird. It's such a Pavlovian response. But then I have birds chirping And
That's lovely.
It's awesome.
That is
I can't
lovely.
explain it. I feel so, that's it. Yeah, I feel so,
I've seen that.
I used to say I feel so like soft.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't think David Goggins wakes up with a daylight alarm. But then I was like, well, but this is me. And like we talked before, do you have a lot of your veterans who are like embarrassed? They're like, man, my life and my brain's messed up. I know I have problems and I'm embarrassed. And
Yeah.
they were serving our country. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Let's get you better,
Yeah,
brother or sister.
I've worked with a lot of people in the military and a lot of special forces too. Like I've worked with, I mean, every single member is an important, vital member.
Oh, yeah.
But I've definitely heard that because, I mean, they do put their body through a rigorous process that excelled in. And now they're here and they're like, how can I not remember the last 3 things I just did? But I was able to do all that really cool stuff back then.
Sure.
And so, yeah, and I think embarrassment is a huge part of it, lack of understanding. And I would say sometimes it's such a bridge of a gap of knowing that you have something and accepting that you have something, because I would say that's where a lot of people struggle. And those are the people that are probably looking at our website, seeing if they should become a patient or not. And they're like, I do, but I don't. I do, but I don't. I do.
Sure.
And so, because it is a kind of a problem. I mean, it was a problem for me.
Accepting it.
Yeah, because because I think there's such a stigma surrounding it. And if you really
bet.
see it more as like, it's not a fatal diagnosis or anything like that. It's really, truly like, hey, you could use a little help. Let me help you make your life a little better. That can move the needle quite a bit. But for me, I was like, I'm a straight A student. I'm not the sick one. My mom's usually the sick one. Like, I excel in everything I do. Like, what? Like, how am I having issues, you know? And so until you kind of get humbled quite a few times, and you maybe get into a few fender benders because you couldn't tell how...
Speaking my language.
Yeah, how far away. Or you have to call your husband because you took a wrong turn, and then you're like, I don't even know where I'm at, and my maps isn't working. You're like, can you direct me back home? I don't know where I'm at. And you're like 5 minutes from home. So,
Wow.
yeah, so things like that are
How
things...
long ago was the last time that happened to you?
Oh, thank the Lord, that happened like quite a long time ago. I would say about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. It's still scary, man.
Super scary.
Yeah.
Super scary. I mean...
It's crazy.
Yeah, and things that you kind of, and then because you do other processes so well, like, I passed all of my board exams on the first try. I, work out quite often. I mean, I go to the gym, I lift weights, I do HIIT exercises,
But you ended up in Denton, not Duncanville, or
I don't
whatever.
even know where I was going.
Or
I
the
just
other way
remember being
around.
like, I need help.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
If you could narrow down the most common symptom that you hear that brings people in, what would that be? Is there one that's head and shoulders above others when people coming to you, they're looking for help because I can't, or this is happening, or whatever?
I'm going to put 1, but I'm going to say 3. So, number 1, I think it would be memory.
Okay.
2 would be sleeplessness.
Yeah.
So, like unrested sleep or difficulty falling asleep or waking up multiple times. And I think the last one would be just odd things, odd symptoms. People like I know the word of it, but I just can't say it. Or I feel like I remember people's faces, but I don't remember their names. Why do I remember that? Clumsiness is a big one too.
Well, and on the memory thing, a lot of people just, I have a bad memory.
Yeah,
And you're like, well, I think it's actually more serious than that.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to turn everyone here into a hypochondriac.
No.
Where we're all like, I'm sick, I gotta go to the doctor. I'm just saying, if you could live a better life, a freer life, a happier, more joyful, healthier life, wouldn't you want to? If that was out there, and if you don't know what's wrong, but you feel like our bodies tell us when something's off.
Yeah.
Mine does. I'm like, I told you about hurting my ribs. I was like, that's going to be a good one right there. Like, especially if you're an athlete. Back to sleep. Sleep hygiene. Your sleep your sleep routine, your screen time, your sleep environment, all of that. How many people don't understand how damaging sleep apnea is to their overall brain health?
So many.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few patients that have CPAPs too. And, it's not really something you have to ingest. It's something that can kind of help for the time being. If anything can be done to help with it. I mean, I know some biological dentists that do amazing work with the rooftop palate that can help with the airway passage. But I know I have a lot of patients that they're like, oh, I have it, but I don't use it. I'm like, why? Like, please assist yourself and give yourself the best leg forward.
Why don't they like it? They're just claustrophobic.
It's like the mask is probably uncomfortable to some point, and I'm like, but some is better than nothing. Like, sleep to me is number one thing. I mean, if you don't sleep, your brain goes the fastest.
Yeah.
More than nutrition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sleep is that important.
Yes.
Is when you have these raving fans for patients who are just like, oh my gosh, you've changed my life. Is that one of the first things they rave about is I can finally get a good night's sleep again?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a single person that's a very jolly, joyful person that works on like no hours of sleep.
Right.
And I mean, none. I mean, to a point you can get a little cynical and be happy cynical. But no, I mean, it is by far one of the number one things that more than the memory, because memory is a Pandora's box. I mean, it really is. I mean, we always tell people if we work on your memory, we don't know what's going to come back. So do you have some past traumas that could be more the reason as to why you are not remembering
like
things?
Possibly like emotional traumas and things of that nature? Sure.
I am not a mental health expert by any means. I just know that can be tied together. So we make that disclaimer. Sometimes, if memory is a goal for you that you want to work functionally, that'd be great. Just understand that, we don't get to choose what comes back. So some people are like, yeah, I walked down the street and I remember that ice cream cone I had when I was 7. It was wonderful. And then some people are like, oh, my sleep was super disturbed because I actually remembered stuff that I don't know I wanted to remember.
Oh, man.
So that's a Pandora's box. But I would say more than that, we get the whole short-term memory is a great thing, right? I get more concerned when people say I don't remember my childhood than I just don't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know what's coming back from then.
Sure.
But I do know that a lot of people get happier when they're like, yeah, I was able to retrace my steps. But I would say number one thing that if there's one thing that I see the most grateful people for is I can sleep again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're trying to not, like if you're debating on getting a CPAP or doing a sleep study or any of that, it is a pain. Obviously, you're saying it's beneficial or it can be beneficial. What are some other things besides limiting screen time and making sure that you've got a serene place to rest and all of that are important to you called it sleep hygiene, to your sleep hygiene routine? What are some other natural things people can do for themselves to improve their own sleep?
Actually, looking at the sunset.
Okay.
It kind of sets your circadian clock because your brain, that's why dogs are so good at that. Dogs are great at being able to go out. Lots of dogs actually go out and kind of look at the horizon.
Yeah.
And you kind of like, oh, they're just enjoying the outdoors. Like it actually sets a natural circadian clock, just like for us too. So
Interesting.
The light wavelengths that we get through our eyes really do send a message to our brain as to what hormones to produce. So more melatonin can start being produced, cortisol starts dropping a little bit, whereas in the morning it's very different. It's actually the opposite. So that's a really great one. Obviously stopping caffeine sometime around, my preference is like 3-4 o'clock would probably be best. I know a lot of people love like their evening coffee.
How do people do that?
I'm from Puerto Rico, so I know how people do it, but I just don't condone it.
There's no way I could do that. If I'm into the caffeine after like 1 p.m., I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I am in trouble at 10 because I'm supposed to be asleep at 10. If I have to be up at 5, there's no way.
Yeah.
The sleep thing's something so many people struggle with. In fact, I have a recommendation for you. I think you
Okay.
should start a sister Instagram page.
For just sleep?
Sleep influencer.
Yeah, the sleep influence.
Well, I've been trying to find somebody to talk to about sleep,
Yeah.
the importance of sleep. Was this what kind of lit your fire when you realized what functional neurology was? That it was so broad and all-encompassing, and it was, when I say holistic, I'm using the word whole, like the whole human. Like you're talking to someone, you're not limited in how you can help. Obviously, you can't saw their skull open
Yeah.
and rewire something. That's something for the surgeon.
Yeah.
But in terms of everything else that you can help them with, I mean, your options are, you got a lot of tools in your toolbox.
And that's the thing is like for a long time I was so narrow-minded. I thought there was only this one path.
The conventional path.
Yeah, and then I saw, oh my gosh, like this is so much bigger, and I'm a believer, and so I do like to know that we were made for a purpose and that everything we do has intention. And so that's what I love about functional neurology is that it's the intention behind the movement, the exercise, the supplement, the protocol, the sleep hygiene, it's how you do it. It's not always what you do, but how you do it. So you mentioned hyperbaric earlier. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, I love hyperbaric. I have absolutely nothing against it. But I know that your hyperbaric experience can be enhanced if after you do hyperbaric, you activate certain neural cells for a specific function. Because now you're priming your body and your brain with increased oxygen levels, which we know are good for brain cells.
Right.
I mean, we obviously need oxygen, glucose, no toxins for healthy energy and ATP that fuels a neuron cell to be able to make it function appropriately. You fire that neuron, then you start building plasticity. And then that, one paved road that you started creating becomes the 6-lane highway. So that's what I love about functional neurology, is that it is a process that comes with intention, frequency, intensity of time that you actually see benefit long term. Because eventually your brain and body can start doing it for its own self, as opposed to all of these other tools, which are amazing, but solely on itself can only take you so far.
I think that should be cut for a micro content clip right there. I think that's your functional neurology. I think that's your what do they used to call those advertisements where it was like a whole. Remember those ads? It was an ad. They'd be selling a product, be like a 30-minute ad. You know?
Yeah.
Infomercial.
Yeah.
That's like your infomercial for yeah. So right after hyperbaric, and I have an oxygen concentrator on that bad boy and everything. Right after that, what should I get out and do? A calculus problem?
I don't know. It kind of depends. Like I'd have to do an exam on you to try to figure out, and that's where the fun part comes. Is like I'm
walk on
like
a balance
detective.
beam?
I don't know. I'm a detective, so I
Okay.
have to figure out what
Interesting.
systems are working really well for you, what aren't, and then after that, put it in play. How does your body respond doing it in action? How does the rest of your body respond to it? And so I'm a geek. I'm a total geek.
No, it's fascinating.
I just love it so much.
Like I
because-
hate sitting inside.
Yeah.
Like looking at a computer. Like I hate it so much. I can have like $60,000 or $70,000 that I have to collect. Mm-hmm. And it fully depends on me sitting in front of the computer and pressing some buttons for like 2 hours. And I will do everything in my power to avoid that sitting still and that's it could have nothing to do with my issues or a lot to do with them. Like you talked about studying, dark, cold, quiet room or whatever. It's just crazy. Like when you really think about it, maybe this isn't for me. When I found out I had bad brain, messed it up royally, right? Way too many headbutts and tackles and crazy living. I was relieved because I had thought, well, that's just a character issue.
Yeah, I much agree with you on that. I
Right?
also had that complex. I'm like, maybe I'm just like a screw up. Maybe I just screw up
Yes.
these things.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Man, so other people are so lucky. Maybe I'm just not very lucky because I shoot the hoop on the side.
Right.
And so then you start realizing it's not luck. It's not a character flaw. Well, sometimes some people may need a little bit of
Sure.
character personalization. If there's a little bit of pride or selfishness, that's
Right.
something else. That's
Yeah.
not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But this one is like performance based,
Exactly.
right? If your performance base isn't doing well, it's not necessarily you that it's a character flaw or anything like that. It can just really be like, no, there's certain processes just not clicking correctly, like the fender bender issue.
Yeah.
Mine was a total issue. It's like I could not, for the life of me back then, tell
How
if
far away?
how far away that car was. And
Really? So your depth perception was all.
yeah.
Really?
But then, as a rugby player, you
Yeah.
know that your eyes, when the ball comes towards you
Yeah.
and you're going to catch that ball, what do your eyes do? They converge.
Right.
And then when it goes out, they diverge.
Yes.
And so that's depth.
Right.
And if your eyes don't do that appropriately or efficiently, that translates to real life. And then now you can get into a car accident because you don't really know how far away that car is in front of you.
Because you're talking about like fractions of a second.
Yes.
That if you're just a little behind.
Yep.
Or a little bit off.
Yep.
Bang, you're hitting somebody's fender.
It is such a subtle thing.
Yeah.
It is eyes specifically, and even posture and balance. What we look for as functional neurologists, they're so subtle, but they can have such a large impact because that's that subtlety that you do all day, every day, under the influence of not really knowing. So it's
Right.
so subclinical that it's like you can easily be like, that was just an accident. That was an accident. Until those accidents become more frequent.
Right.
And those things become more frequent. And then things starts falling apart. And then I have people come in and be like, I feel like I'm a broken car. I
Yeah.
just have broken parts everywhere.
Because they just keep banging into stuff. I used to walk, if I was walking like through my office, through doorways, and I'm a pretty large human, but I'm not. I mean, I have friends that make me look like a small child that I played sports with. I'm not that big.
Yeah.
And I would misjudge the door jamb and just drill the door jamb with my shoulder. I'm walking, maybe I'm on the phone, whatever, boom.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
this is,
That's
so
a
when
big
you
one.
say balance, are you talking about like, well, you mentioned your balance issue from going from prone to sitting or standing, obviously. Sohail mentioned he had the same deal. But what other things can you be looking for if you wonder if you have balance issues? I mean, different people will have different levels of natural athleticism or
Yeah.
maybe trained athleticism. But you're talking about like, maybe it's not an athletic situation.
Yep.
And you're just standing and maybe you kind of trip or.
Oh, yes.
what do you-
Slipping, tripping,
Yeah.
falling, big deal. I got to figure out, is it a balance issue? Is it a gravity issue? Can you feel the floor? That's
Is
a
it
big
a
one.
Coors Light issue?
Is it a Coors Light issue?
Right.
But the one you're talking about is a big one, clumsiness. And it's like, there's a door there, there's a door frame.
Yep.
And you're like, I'm not going to hit the door frame. And then somehow you end up hitting the door frame still. And you're like, how is this possible? Reoccurrent injuries in the same area are a big one. For me, it used to be my right side.
Okay.
And I was like, this right side is cursed. Something's wrong with it.
Crazy.
Every time I hit myself, it's there. It's not a coincidence.
Wow,
It's
that's
for a
very
reason.
similar. Everything for me is on the left side. Everything.
My favorite.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
right-handed?
I am
I'm
too.
right-handed. My favorite ism about balance
Right.
and coordination is are you the kind of person that you're walking alongside someone and then you're constantly getting in their way and they're like, dude, you're walking in my
Yeah,
path. Like, get
right.
away from me. So, yeah.
Interesting.
That's a big one too because it has a lot to do with like balance. So you're not balanced correctly. You're not walking
Sure.
in a straight line. So you're kind of stumbling around.
Yeah.
So that's a fun one that people don't know about. Sorry to interrupt
No,
you, but
go for it.
other big one that can tell me a lot about posture and gravity
Right.
in your brain is people that sit back in an office chair that goes back further and further and further, and then they go, oh. They're like, oh.
Lose their equilibrium a little bit.
Kind of like they're kind of leaning back. And I know there's some people out there,
Yeah, there are.
but it almost like the chair goes back farther than you anticipated and you kind of get spooked and you're like, whoa.
Sure.
That's a big one that tells me on like something's off with your balance, and I can almost 100% say what the diagnostic would look like on that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What posture issues do you see that are tells that tell you there's an issue here, possibly a brain issue here?
back to chiropractic, a lot of specific pain in specific areas of the spine and body. I tell everyone gravity will always be going this way, 9.8 meters per second square. Always.
Okay. Right.
We are the ones that kind of go towards that line.
Sure.
So wherever we stand, with that line, if we're not parallel to it, but we're more erring on perpendicular,
Right.
that plumb line will fall somewhere in our body, and it will increase a lot of weight into it and pressure. So pain in specific areas of the body because of that is a big one. And then clearly visually and posture, being able to see forward neck carriage, hips out, hips to back. You usually typically see people forward. You don't really see people stand like this unless they've had
forward,
drinking.
Because a lot, right. Is the forward a lot because of how much we're on our screens? We're all hunched over our screens all the time, or?
I don't think it's helping people.
Yeah.
I think that you're plastically changing muscle tone to be more flexor dominant than extensor dominant.
Okay.
So a lot of it can be undertraining of specific musculature. And then more seriousness can be, if people have like a scoliosis of some type, that's more of a stibular issue.
Sure.
Now you're looking at more specific brain balance systems that it's like, something's not right there.
You probably talk to veterans or civilians who come talk to you, guys or gals who are struggling with depression. Maybe they're not open about it right away when you get started. Maybe the tears start flowing, whatever happens. And while you're talking to them and you're like 1 hour interview with them or whatever. You can go talk to a mental health expert about that. You can get a pill for that, whatever. I mean, it's your life, it's your body, it's your brain. Can you talk about how damaging or non-beneficial it is to try to treat anxiety and depression long-term with pharmaceuticals, whether it's an SSRI or whether it's a benzo? Long-term, that's not the best, maybe be-all, end-all solution when it comes down to trying to solve a problem, especially if we're referring to quality of, someone's quality of life.
My biggest caveat, because I have such a wide perspective on that because of the population I work with, is if that's the only thing and you're not taking into account any other aspect of your life, not nutrition, not relationships, not sleep, not function, not joy, then I think that's a problem because that you're not doing anything else to continue to assist you to be able to get out of that, which is difficult in itself, right? Because if you've ever been depressed, this is not, again, I am not a mental health expert, so this is purely my personal opinion. But I do think depression, if we had to paint a picture of it, usually as like a cold, dark room, and you're kind of like, I need help. But I'm like, I don't even know how to move from here. Whereas anxiety seems like you're inside of a tornado and you're inside the tornado, so you see everything swirling around you, and people that are outside of the tornado are like, it's just because you're inside of the tornado. You see that. And so I do think that you can have both, but I do feel like those are very large fluctuations of both.
Yeah.
I do believe that some medications can be beneficial if you really are at that brink. I mean, and you know what I'm talking about.
do.
And so at that point in time, you got to do anything and everything necessary that it is to work with any kind of practitioner to get you out of that,
Just
even
to
if
keep
it's
you moving forward.
Yeah, even if it's just to get the bite off, because that's primary, right? But I do believe that only focusing on one aspect and tool of healing and completely neglecting your whole lifestyle that can severely affect your current condition isn't going to lead into very many great places. And there are some pharmaceuticals, not all, that I don't believe long-term forever without any other intervention are going to be the best practice for you. Because at that point, it's, anything can be a Band-Aid. anything. A supplement can be a Band-Aid. An adjustment can be a Band-Aid. A medication can be a Band-Aid. So it really is, how are you going to apply this approach, and how are you going to have a plan? Because I've had, praise the Lord, I've had people come and, get their brains, fixed more functionally and have been able to get out of certain ruts, right? We've had people that are working with some other mental health practitioners and on certain things, and praise the Lord, have been able to get out of that, and so there's a lot of talk about that. I know that like in the media, there's a lot of talk about psychedelic medicine and all that stuff too. So there's a lot of tools out there. I just feel like to a certain extent, those people may even need an advocate, such as a family member or a friend, to help them walk through it. Because when you're in it, man, you're in it. And there is not really much
having
out.
someone to help you who doesn't guilt trip you,
or judge or anything like that. Yeah,
it's huge. There's no doubt about that. But don't you think there's people who are depressed or who have anxiety or who have both, who have no idea that they have brain trauma or an unhealthy brain, or they think, well, I'm going to go talk to a shrink, right? Work on my brain. But those solutions that come back, nothing against counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists. I've talked to all of them. Myself, used them in my life for benefit. Sometimes I got no benefit from it. Sometimes maybe it didn't benefit me. Maybe I feel like it harmed me. Whatever. But maybe exploring this functional neurology thing is something that somebody with if your symptom is, I just wake up every day and I didn't want to wake up, and it keeps happening. If they came and talked to you and you put them through the tests and you could take a look at them and got down to at their level and figured out what's going on, you might be able to figure out that, hey, you're not fucked up, man. Like, we can help you here. Let's work on some lifestyle stuff and let's get you rolling. Maybe they have sleep apnea and they don't know it. A lot of single guys and gals out there have no idea. They have no idea.
Put a camera.
Yeah, what are you going to record yourself all night?
Hope the door doesn't close on its own.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No doubt. That's a real concern to me, though, because a lot of times people are depressed or just sad. Maybe they're just sad, or they have anxiety. It's, go talk to somebody and get a pill for it. And you're like, whoa. I mean, like you said, if that's the save shot for now, take the save shot. But maybe if better nutrition, no vegetable oil, no processed food, no white flour, sugar, dairy, corn, soy, gluten. Maybe eliminate all that too and try more olive oil, avocado oil, whole foods, things like that. Watch the sunset. That's crazy. The watch the sunset things, is that something you do? You go watch the sunset?
I try sometimes, especially when I come back home, and like if I know I'm home and I'm letting my dog out to go do her business and I'm able to kind of look at the sunset. I live in a neighborhood that actually has a very good view of a sunset.
That's kind of rare around here. Yeah, everything's so darn flat. Yeah. That's cool. The mental health aspect, back to that, where you're able to help people, will people come in and talk to you and you go, okay, we're going to work on a few of these things here, but I think you should go talk to somebody about some of these emotional things you're going through as well?
If I have a mental health person, first and foremost, I really make the disclaimer, I'm not a professional on that, but if you are working with someone already and you are interested in looking at your brain's functioning and its, capacity and how are you performing, and I mean, you have to wonder, is it doing all the things? And that's how I think a lot of people get frustrated with doctors too, because they're like, well, you didn't have the answer right away. And I'm like, well, I have to look at everything. So, and that's how we get there is you test, you look, you find answers, you compare. Now, you want to find practitioners that actually want to help you. That's the bad part. But then again, you have good and bad people in every profession. So, and that I would say is the hardest part. But if I was working with someone like that, I would say, let's look at your brain functioning. Do you have a previous history? Because I've had someone today that was like, I was like talking to them and I looked at their, whole stuff and I go, any history of a motor vehicle accident? oh, only one in college. Was it a big one? And what happened? And so I'm starting to get a lot of information. And am I saying that's the root cause to everything? No. Am I saying that is something that is plausible? Maybe. And so this person may be maladapting for 20 years. Now you have plasticity and maladaptation for 20 years.
Because that you got a roadblock where the brainwave should have been going, so the brain adapted and made a different road.
Yeah.
But that road has to go way over here to get to the destination.
Yeah, to help you survive.
Yeah.
So think about this. That person that was coming in may have had that motor vehicle accident, much like me, didn't think about it, didn't care about it, didn't everything. And so slowly but surely, because these things are small, like you said earlier, like just a millisecond of an eye movement, just a millisecond of this, slowly and slowly and slowly, brain adapts and adapts and adapts to the stressor and adapts to the stressor until 20 years later, you're like, oh, okay. And it happens the same metabolically too, because brains produce hormones, right?
Does PTSD cause a difference in the actual, like, molecular makeup of the brain? Like, if you experience a traumatic event, you develop PTSD, could you do a test on a brain before the event and a couple of years after the event and notice widely different activity in the brain?
So this is speculative because that's a great question, and I am not one of those people that's a master of all. But my thought process on that would be I can definitely see how theoretically you can have PTSD change brains because the brain's formed by experiences, senses, vision, hearing, touch, sound, smell. And so usually an event triggers a post-traumatic stress, right? And so if you have that and nothing's ever worked or dealt with on that, I can see how that can plastically change your response to similar stimuli as you move forward. So I can definitely see that. And I do see a lot of TBI and PTS with my population. And you can have TBI without PTS. You can have PTS without TBI. But there's really something about having both of them because they have a lot of overlapping symptoms like insomnia being one of them, sleeplessness being one of them.
Wow, that's crazy. Do you know who Rick Rubin is? The famous record producer. Is
I
that
should know
huge
so many people.
beard? What did he say? What record company did Def Jam, right?
Yeah, he produced all those back then. He produced he was found
Beastie
System of a
Boys.
Down,
Oh,
Beastie Boys,
okay.
Cowboy.
Yeah, I know
Red
them.
Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah,
Love them.
Genius.
Strokes.
Yeah, yes, there you go. That's right up my alley right there. He was on with Rogan last week or something, was talking about his fitness journey and how he always felt like he had so much creativity in his mind. He used to be very large, but he just had to live in his mind because his body was they were like not on the same page. Where I'm going with this is how important is it when you're talking about lifestyle with your patients or your friends or your family, that you're talking to them about how important fitness is, and how important it is to, fold that into the habits of your day, whether it's walks or whatever, getting your body moving. And do you think that the body affects the mind more than the mind affects the body, or do you think it can be both, or what is? Yeah,
I would say it's a bidirectional feedback. I mean, I can definitely
bidirectional feedback. I like it. All right.
Much like gut and brain.
Symbiotic.
Yeah. I mean, if you have negative
Sure.
thought patterns, if you are a negative mindset, and talking more so not about mental health, but more about like character, personhood. If you really are a person that, tends to gravitate toward the negative, and it's more of like a personal issue on yourself, on having to remove some things from your heart, I can see how that can definitely affect your body. I mean, this not being well isn't going to make that look and move very well.
Right.
But this moving well can definitely help that. And there's tons of literature talking about brain-derived neurotrophic factors, so BDNF, and how that helps neuronal cells, oxygenation of the brain in itself. And there's tons. And best way to say it is use it or lose it, right? You don't use your body, you don't move. Your movement is, even if it's just a brisk walk, I mean, it has benefits. People are saying that you can have a meal and not even just physically, but metabolically. Have a meal, go for a short walk, and your blood glucose comes down. So movement, but not overtraining, because that's another aspect. But movement in itself, even if it's just yoga or maybe high intensity one day or maybe strength training, just a walk, is all great.
The one thing about when the cold hit in 2020 and we all got told to sit inside, stay away from people, right? Don't go to the gym. You can go to your big box stores. They can make the money, but the mom and pops shut everybody down. I'm sure you can tell where I sit on all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when the cold came out, a lot of people were like, well, okay, I'm going to stay inside. Took a lot of people out of their active habits, whether it was walking or running or doing whatever it was outside. Have you seen an increase in terms of patient volume since the cold came out? Because people were away from work, maybe they were home alone or with people, but they maybe had more time to realize that something was wrong?
Oh, yeah. I've seen dramatically an increase in people come with a lot. I mean, I feel like that period of time brought out a lot of healthcare questions in general. I think people saw a lot of the value of movement and socialization and just being out and about. And so I think the one positive thing is I do feel like a lot of people started questioning, like, do I live my healthiest life? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people said no. And so I think a lot of people are starting to realize, oh, well, what are the things that I can do for myself then? And that's where the lifestyle has been brought into a lot of people.
Right, because you get one life with one body, with one brain. Mm-hmm. If someone told you that whatever car you drove here to the studios in was the only car you get for the rest of your life, how much more religious would you be about getting those tires rotated and balanced, changing that oil, washing and waxing that thing, making sure that in 50 years or 60 years, it's still there and it's still doing what it needs to do. And yet our bodies, we only get one, man. And we're throwing down what they brought in, or Cheetos, or a pizza, or...
And the thing is like, that's
Diet
so
Red
funny.
Bull, or whatever.
I used to be a Monster person.
Yeah?
I regret it. But the thing is like, when you're in that, and because we talked about previously, like when you've had a head injury versus when you haven't. And so when you haven't had any brain concerns at all, at least nothing that you've like really noticed, and you kind of going through life and you don't really realize, I got something in here, it's my noggin. You kind of live life unknowing of your consequences 24/7, and then you see advertisement and you see commercials and everyone looks happy when they're eating a Cheeto. Everyone looks happy when they're drinking a Coca-Cola.
Yeah, it's called marketing.
Yeah,
Right.
Marketing. And so like it can be so hard to do that mental mindset, especially if you have a family that is much of the same mindset, that doesn't really eat healthy, that doesn't really try to do that stuff. It can be such a difficult thing, because I've spoken to people that they truly believe, and in health, I guess is for everyone to determine, but they truly believe, well, I'm not that bad because I only drink Coca-Cola twice a day every day. And I don't do these other things. But it really is, I feel like there's something criminal about the marketing that they're doing and the way these things are being falsely advertised, because it's making people believe that they're making the best choices.
Well, if the cold got everyone thinking about their health and the choices that they made, I think it also all got us thinking about how we live inside the box.
Oh my gosh.
We live inside the box. We get our information off of here. We form our opinions from here. I don't care what website. I don't care what political party. I don't care. I'm not a member of either of the two accepted ones anyways. It's just nuts, right? That you're just inundated with marketing all the time. Billboards.
Yeah.
your phone, the TV, the radio, XM, whatever you're listening to, watching, reading, it's usually somebody trying to sell you something. So maybe being more intentional about that.
That intention is the word that comes up in my mind. Is like, I remember I just got so over everyone's opinions. I just deleted all my apps for a little while. And I was like, what can I do today? What can I do today? It's like much like going on vacation. Like when you go on a vacation, you're not really tied to your phone as much. You're only focused on like, where am I going to eat today? And so living like that in your present time is so much more better for your brain and body, because that's like you're being told a lot of things. This is like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
I have lots to say about social media.
When you're talking to your patients or friends or family, yes, it is because your handle is so legit. It really is. It's awesome. You're gonna thank yourself one day.
Okay.
You are. Are you telling them like, hey, when you're dialing in your nutrition, there is actually such a thing as brain food? So that's like a trending term in nutrition and biohacking, like avocado, that's a brain food, or what? Is that a real thing? Is there such a thing as foods?
I believe so. I think that, if you're listening to this and you're having a specific condition, please understand that nutrition is individual, and depending on what process you're going through. Like, for example, I have a patient I'll be working with here soon that I'm going to place her on a FODMAP diet and then switch her to a paleo.
What's that FODMAP? What's that?
Has a lot to do with your ability, you're really struggling with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so you have a lot of bad gut bacteria, but I don't believe it's sustainable forever, but for her treatment plan, it's not a forever thing. So nutrition is difficult because I think we all tend to think about like, well, this is a nutrition thing that I have to do forever. So when I talk about brain foods, I want people to realize that depends on where you're at in your journey with food. So don't just go ahead and be like, well, I'm going to drop this whole thing because she said this. But I do believe avocado specifically is very good brain food because your brain needs fats. Your brain needs and loves fats. It's longer term energy. It's good for you. And so I think we live in such a blood sugar dysregulation culture that we're just, maybe you don't have diabetes, but your blood sugar's doing this all day.
Yeah.
And so your brain's like, I don't even know what to do now. Like, this is crazy. I'm going into it, out of it, into it, out of it. And I'm crashing throughout the day. Fats are longer term energy. And so I love when someone tells me that they, ate a nice avocado before they came into therapy and stuff, because I have more substance.
Yeah. The keto has been big. And
Keto's fantastic for people that have blood sugar issues, especially like hypoglycemia. Being on a keto diet for a little while and really helping your body start using fats as an energy source is a great thing. Has been really greatly shown for some brain boosting benefits. Do I think any of these are forever? No. But they can be momentary for a period of time and really help you. I mean, you got to think about your gut, and gut as a colony. It's like you're helping little people that are bacteria of colony to be able to live and thrive. So things have to be dynamic and change, and for the brain too. So I don't think a purely non-grain lifestyle forever is an amazing thing, because grains are good for cardiovascular health. But I think we need to get more dynamic in our thinking about nutrition. It's like, no, you don't have to be this forever. No, you don't have to be that forever.
Kind of like working out.
Yeah.
If you do the same thing every day, your body's like, meh, and you don't see the results. If you change it up, whether it's for the variety of trying to get motivated or stay on track working out or whatever, there's a difference there. What are some other things besides avocados? Like fish has got some good fats in it,
Fish
right?
is great. Oil, honestly, the good ones, right? Like olive oil, ghee butter, coconut oil, cooking them in specific heats because you don't want to also eat the oxidized stuff. That's inflammatory. But, okay, don't murder me, anyone that's from Texas, but pecans or pecans, whatever you want to say. Those are great. They say that they look like a brain, so they're good for you. So things like that are I think are very good.
A lot of fats in nuts, right? Yeah.
So, and then again, like nutritionally, like, you know, you can be going through a thyroid dysregulation. You can be going through other stuff and a concussion. So specifically talk to someone, because I know people get so confused because they're like, well, I'm doing the best thing for my brain. But, you know, nuts and legumes like are really high histamine and I have mast cell activation syndrome. And it's like, okay, then you need to be talking to someone specific for this. But for the general population, is a avocado and a pecan or pecan beneficial for you more than Cheetos? Absolutely.
Oh, no doubt. You sold it there. What does alcohol do to the brain as someone who deals with the brain every day? What have you seen that it does, and what have you studied that it does, and what do you know that it does?
So I personally don't even drink alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
Because
of your TBI history?
You know what? I just don't have any benefit to it.
Yeah.
So I have an Oura ring, and I'm not about sponsorships, but if they want to sponsor, go ahead, because I love this thing.
Really? What's it do?
So it does measure my heart rate variability.
Okay.
It measures, which is a secondary autonomic nervous system measurement tool. It measures how well your autonomic nervous system is adapting throughout the day.
Interesting.
Measures my sleep, my deep REM sleep, total sleep, activity levels. I mean, I get my temperature.
So it messages you every morning. It like downloads everything you've done.
It tells me exactly where I'm at for the day.
So don't go commit any murders because they'll know where you were.
Basically.
Okay.
But I didn't think I was going to do that.
Okay. Just making sure you're good to go on that.
Yeah, right. Well, the thing I love about this thing is that it really does tell me where I'm at, like, with my day. And so I know how much I can challenge myself throughout the day with it.
Okay.
And so you're going to have to remind me where we left off on that, because I
No,
got
I
a little
will.
excited about
No,
that.
I'm going to come right back to it because it ties right in.
But I do love this device because it does tell me a lot of information.
How long have you used it for?
I think I've had it now for 2.5 years. I think so.
Was the ring what showed you that like you were dehydrated, getting bad sleep, all of these things were diminishing when your alcohol intake would
That's where we
happen?
were.
Yeah.
Alcohol. So, and the thing is,
See, I'm the professional. See, I can remember.
I don't do professional podcasts. Dang.
I am not the professional.
Yeah. So the thing I liked about it is that I've been on a health journey for a long time, and so I started realizing that even just one drink of alcohol would throw my system off completely.
Amazing.
And I would have not had any idea, and I mean no idea whatsoever, because I would wake up. Sometimes you feel like crap, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And I would see that my heart rate was like 110 sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning. My respiration rate was super high.
What should have it been instead of 110 at 3 in the morning?
Typically a lot lower. I mean, like...
In the 80s?
No, even lower than that.
Wow.
Like a lot lower. And so you want to see...
Wow, that's crazy.
You want to see a curve of your resting heart, like not HRV, but resting heart rate go down and then curve up toward the morning. And it was like spiking, like crazy.
Do you think that was the sugars in the alcohol, or?
I think all of it. Because technically alcohol turns into sugar anyways, metabolized, but it does pass the blood-brain barrier. Yeah. And it's the one thing that I'm like, is there a benefit to it?
Well, it's crazy because it's legal.
Yeah.
If it was introduced to the population today, it would 100% be a controlled substance.
Yeah.
And that blood-brain barrier thing, people do not understand that alcohol has to go through your system 2 times before. That's why people die of alcohol poisoning or can. It's one of the only drugs that you can actually overdose and die from. There's some other hardcore drugs like heroin that just pretty much put you to sleep forever because your breathing just stops. But alcohol, I mean, it's rough stuff, and I don't think people realize it. And I think too, as you get a little older, you really start to notice that, my goodness, I mean, when you're young, you have endless energy. When you're a little older and you just have a couple, I mean, the next day is not fun.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a hangover, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out what the benefit is.
I think
Is where other than like the good time,
the social aspect.
But like, was that a good time, or are you imagining that was a good time? So
you imagine that you're funnier than you really were.
yeah,
probably.
and then on the outside, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that joke was terrible." So are you doing yourself a favor?
Yes.
Not sure.
Familiar, yes. Interesting. Yeah, the alcohol, that's crazy that ring. So was seeing those actual results what made you go, this doesn't even make sense for me anymore?
Well, yeah, because I want to be peak performance of myself, because
Interesting.
the better I feel, the better relationships I have with people, the
Yeah.
better I can work, the happier I am, the
Yeah.
more joyful I am. And so I saw that
Well, it is a depressant after all.
It is a depressant.
Yeah.
And I saw my autonomic nervous system scores go to 30s, 20s, and that's really low. So for those, the higher the better. So anything close to 0 is bad. I mean, today I'm sporting a nice 77.
Boom.
So, but
All
thinking
over
about
it.
you just broke my chiropractic heart with
Yeah,
that,
sorry
but it's
about
okay.
that. Yeah.
It's
You can thank this guy right here for all that action.
okay. But we'll get back to that one.
Yes,
But,
yes, sorry.
But in that sense, I just started seeing the correlation thanks to this. And I was like, I am not getting any benefit whatsoever from this. So I just stopped, and I don't miss it.
Yeah.
I maybe have like, I know I have family members that like to drink wine, and I'll taste it for just the pure of
Sure.
tasting it. But I love myself a mocktail. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you have the actual numbers, though, to back it up. As a
yeah.
physician, you're not just saying, I just feel better without it. I mean, you do, but now you know why, because there's proof in the numbers there. As a person of faith, you seem very passionate about this subject. I like to
Yeah.
talk to passionate people. That's what this podcast is about. I run on passion. I think life really sucks when you're not passionate, when things are a bummer all the time.
Yeah.
Being excited about things is, to me, what makes life fun. Do you feel like this is your purpose in life, helping people this way? Because it seems like you do.
Yeah, I'm a big person of faith myself too, and I remember when I was trying to choose a career path, I just remember having
I thought you were going to say choose a faith.
no career path.
Yes.
When I was trying to choose a career path, I just remember being like, having so much anxiety and stress about it. And so I just kind of surrendered it. And I said, you know what? You're going to open the doors and I'll walk through them. And if they close, they close. If they open, they open. And so I have just subsequently walked through the doors that I believe are opening. And that's where I got to where I am. And so I definitely do believe I am in that sweet spot of being able to use a gift that the Lord has provided and enjoying it. So
Yeah, you get up every day and you like what you do.
oh, I love it, because to me it's a very service, selfless work, because my biggest goal is, I'm definitely one of those doctors that it's like, I like seeing you, but I don't want to see you forever. So I would love to see you outside of here.
At Chili's.
Yeah.
But not here.
But not here.
Let's fix you and get you going.
Exactly. So that's definitely my goal. And I would say that my colleagues' goal that I work with as well is we're very much service-oriented people. And it's truly, it's a place that I can come and just give. And it's awesome.
Not all functional practitioners or conventional practitioners are that way. Is that just because after a while it all becomes mundane or something? Maybe as you get older as a professional, or can you put your finger on
I can't
why it
say
seems that way?
because my boss, she's been at it for a lot longer than
You're
me.
calling your boss old.
No,
Watch out now. Watch out
don't
now.
kill me. No, but she is older than me, and she is still very much so passionate. And so I really think that it may have to be like, are you in the right profession then? Do you have a service heart?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Interesting. After you and I connected and started talking about dates, when to come on the podcast, that Thursday night football game went down with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Was it Dolphins and Bengals? Maybe, I don't recall. But Tua got
actually
another
posted about
concussion.
that.
That is a great post. I tagged you in another post from a concussion doctor who I've talked to a couple of times, who's out of Ontario. He did something. I said, hey, I'm looking forward to talking to you about this. So that was crazy, and I think Sohail's going to try to find us some video on the one that you posted about. But what's crazy is that only like 4 days before.
Yeah.
And you know that, right? That he had another, which was terrible. Okay, is this the... Yeah, this is the Bengals one. So they'll probably show... Oof.
Yeah.
Wait
that
for
that
it.
makes me...
That's the worst right there. That is just...
That raises the hair
Me too.
on my back because that
Me
is
too.
such a huge neurological response.
That's
and like,
horrible.
I think the thing that makes me the saddest about that is that he already had an underlining metabolic problem, which is what concussions usually are. They're primarily a metabolic issue in the brain because the blood-brain barrier gets damaged. There is a huge influx of inflammatory cytokines that happen that are trying to repair. And so he already was undergoing
You're talking about
that.
already because the one that was 4 days before. Sohail, can you find the first one that was before this?
So in my personal and professional opinion,
To a first concussion.
yeah, that second one, that didn't come from his brain was already in an inflammatory process, is what I believe.
Yeah.
Of course, I speculative because I don't know the guy. But
A lot of people don't realize that in collision sports, some of the hardest hits are actually from the ground. So you hit the ground and then your body stops, but your neck whiplashes your head into the ground. It can be on the side, front of your head, back of your head.
also, people don't realize that you can get a concussion not from getting a blow directly to the head.
Can you talk about that first for just a second while Sohail finds us a clip of that first one? That might be it. Yeah, McAfee's been talking about this and about the fact that everybody hates Russell Wilson a lot these days. Yeah, this is the first one. See if they show. Okay, and then he stumbles.
Do you see all that? Do you see
wait
that
for
stumbling?
It gets worse. I mean,
Yep.
that's unreal, man.
I mean,
That
how is that?
absolutely fucking unreal.
How was that missed?
It wasn't.
I have
They're
no
right
idea.
on him. They take him in the tent.
Missed to the point that he was able to go back to play.
Yes.
I don't understand that.
Show the collision here, because I want to talk about. Okay, so bang, bang,
Boom.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. A lot of people. That wasn't even a hard hit. He pushed him in the chest.
Yeah.
Okay, you just made a really important point. Concussions don't have to be from getting completely decleated on the football or rugby field.
Yeah.
How you can get a concussion? Surfers get concussions. Volleyball players get concussions. You said soccer before.
Blast injuries. No one thinks that about a blast injury.
Talk about that. So you're around a blast, a massive noise, and obviously that vibration.
Yeah.
So that vibration is hitting your body just like a 300-pound lineman almost.
Yeah. So you're not seeing a person visibly hit their head on the ground or anything like that, but that is a concussive blast. A lot of the problem is it's the force to the body or head. So there is, okay, I'm about to get nerdy on you.
Do it.
So
That's why you're here.
let's hypothetically say that the brain is like tofu and the brainstem is like a celery stalk.
Okay.
They are different consistencies. Is that 100% accurate? No, but let's go with it for now. So if you have, pure physics, if you have a blast, a concussional force to the body or the head, there is something called axonal shearing that happens. And so it's whenever the cortex and the brainstem can kind of do one of these or even torsional. And so that axonal shearing and that, disruption to the brain cells and neurons and the immune system of the brain and the inflammatory cascade, that's the issue with concussions. It's not always visible. But even with that, that's a clear, in the
stumbling
scale,
is
because you can have
nauseating.
Yeah, you can have a concussion and it have been a millisecond of disorientation that no one even you realized, but that was way long.
That was long,
That
and
was
obviously the
long.
second one is what kicked the firestorm off.
Yeah.
You're familiar with Chris Nowitzki. He's been a huge force. He wrestled in the WWE. He was a football player at Yale. He runs the Brain Institute. Well, he's big advocate about CTEs, been posting almost daily on social media about all this stuff that's happening. And I'm not saying that collision sports need to stop. I
Yeah.
am saying football, you would stop a lot in football if you did just one thing, which is you don't let people, even that hit where it was just a push to the chest. In rugby, that's not legal. You have to wrap up your man. So whether it's women's or men's rugby, you have to wrap up. A lot of these huge hits, you'll see one human just running into the other, just making their body into a projectile, and that's biggest in football. You do that in rugby, you're off the field. You just get kicked out. And I'm not saying that we have to stop collision sports. I know you're not a mom yet, but you will be. I mean, if you have a son, are you and he says, "Mom, I want to play football or rugby or soccer or volleyball," or are you going to be like, "No, absolutely not"? Or what's your stance on that for the moms
Am
out
I
there?
going to try to redirect them to baseball because that was my husband's favorite sport?
There you go.
I'm going to be like, your dad wants you to be a baseball. Then yeah. But I mean, if really they have a gift for it and that's their passion and that's what they want to do, I'm not going to go ahead and tell them no, but I'm going to educate them on the consequences. Because everything has a consequence in life. I'm going to educate them on the consequences. I'm going to tell them about what could or potentially happen. And if they do sustain an injury, the last thing I'm going to do is put them out there again.
Right.
And not because I'm going to take them out forever, but because we're going to do the appropriate and necessary things to know, is he healing? You know?
That's what's most disturbing about this TUA thing.
Yeah,
Is that
no
we're
one
supposed to have a
thought.
protocol in place.
Yeah, I mean, literature is very specific about return to play. So I really don't understand what
Next
happened
level.
there.
Yeah.
So
They-
that was way too fast.
There's a call down from the press box.
Yeah.
If the guy's on the side, because a lot of times in football you can't see what's happening on the field really. If you've ever been down on the sidelines of like an NFL field, they've got a huge arch to them, so they drain properly. You can't see sometimes if you're on the sidelines, but they've got people up there scoping everybody in every collision zone. So you got your quarterback who's behind the line of scrimmage. You're watching your linemen. Those guys don't get concussed that we know of very often, but what you just explained about concussions being almost the reverberation there, not necessarily someone is just ear-holing you. And then they've got guys who are binoculared in on all of the downfield play. So if there's a big hit, they immediately call down, say, stop, go get that guy, get him off the field. They did that, and then they talked to him, and then he came in 2 plays later in that game, and then he came back 4 nights later and was going like that with this. I've never seen hands do.
Yeah, that's
insane.
A cortical issue. And so that really, for people like me, that really frightens us because that means that there was really big damage to certain areas of the brain for him to go into that spasticity.
And the issue here, okay, so we don't want to put our kids, our brothers, sisters, whoever, directly in the line of fire. Let's not go recreate Jackass the show or Jackass the movie.
Loved watching it.
Yes, and
but,
let's not be headbutting walls or just I don't know, trying to bullfight with no cape or whatever those guys were doing. Let's maybe not do that because we know impact to the brain is bad.
Yeah.
But the worst thing about what the NFL did for years, and it's proven, is that they knew what this would do to players and what it could do to players and what it had done to players, but they wouldn't put these protocols into place. And so when I was growing up, it was, oh, you're fine.
Oh, that's
You
so
just
scary.
you just got your bell rung.
Yeah.
And there are still people who say that to me today. Like, well, what's the difference between having a concussion and just getting your bell rung? And I'll say back, I'm not sure, but why would you want to risk that?
Yeah.
Are there different severities or complexities or levels of concussions? Can you have a slight concussion, a severe concussion? I've been completely passed out for multiple minutes in a row after a concussion before. How do they vary in severity?
Yeah. So you have mild, moderate, and severe.
Okay.
And so they're very much determined on, how long did you have loss of consciousness? Was there a penetrating head wound? The length of time of period of dizziness and disorientation. The thing about mild is that none of those have to be present 100%, or like it's not like there's a minimum of a minute or anything like that. So that's why I say those are very difficult to pinpoint out for people.
You could get a concussion if you got rear-ended in traffic and just did the whiplash.
And the problem with that is that, we know, I think moderate and severe are a lot easier to pinpoint. Even the mild ones that are almost moderate are easy to pinpoint out. Those ones are not super easy to point out. But each one of those, like I said earlier, has a metabolic component to it. And so that's the biggest problem that I see. And there's a whole pie chart of things that can influence a person's ability to recover. There's actually a genetic component. I cannot remember for the life of me what the genetic portion is actually called, so I owe you that one and to look it up. But there is a genetic predisposition for you to heal from brain injuries faster. We also have to talk about this. Is it a male or a female that got the concussion? Because females go through changes in their cycle and in their hormones. So are you in an inflammatory state at that time, or are you not? Is your blood-brain barrier compromised? Did you go out drinking the night before? Did you have any alcohol in your system? What did you have in your gut? Were you just digesting Skittles? There is so much that goes into that. Have you had a previous history of streptococcal infections more than the average person? All of those things, all of those things have an impact on how well you can recover, which is why it makes everyone so different to say, like, well, you're not like me, so that must not be it. Well, everyone's different. And so I don't know what those pieces of the pie look like for some people, which is why I think it was so terrible that he went back to play, because it's like we're not taking into consideration so many different things. But I guess we don't know, right? Like I don't know the guy, so he could have been like, no, I'm going back in regardless.
That's how everyone is.
Yeah.
They have to take your helmet away now.
Yeah.
I've been told you're not going back in and gotten back in before. I mean, it's chaos on a lot of sidelines, whether it's football or rugby.
Yeah, but you're not really thinking straight too.
That's right. But you've trained all week. It's your passion. You want to get out there. You're young. I'll pay the consequences. I'll kick the can down the road. I'm good to go on that. So we just watched NFL highlights, and they've got all the protocol, all the personnel, all the cameras, everything. Ambulances on the sideline. You take them in for an X-ray or an MRI under the stadium in most of these. But if you're on the sidelines at a YMCA game or a high school game or something like that, and you see a loved one or a teammate or a son or a daughter get their bell rung, what I know that especially at the high school level, I mean, high school football runs the field here in Texas. I mean, it's the big bad boy on the block, but. If you see that happen, what's the recovery protocol for like a young person? Let's just say a high school kid. If they get, it's a volleyball player, maybe she takes a spike, she wasn't looking, off the back of the head or so, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the protocol then? Are we out of the game and then we need to keep lights off and make sure they don't go to sleep for a while?
That's a great thing.
We going straight to the emergency room? Are we calling you? What are we doing?
That is a great thing, because you really need to have athletic trainers that are very, very good at what they do. And I think we're missing the mark on that, because you do have to make a determination if this person, depending on what the injury was like, do they need to go get checked to have a brain bleed? But then again, if it's too quick, we may not see that brain bleed on imaging just yet. Like fractures, when you have a fracture, if you take an x-ray right away, you may not see the fracture just yet. So that is a big deal. First and foremost has to be, do you know who you are? Time, location thing. Looking at pupillary dilation. Looking at the fact if they're disoriented or not. Like, obviously, laying them recumbent is a really big deal. But right after that, like if things, let's say the person comes back to consciousness or never lost consciousness, and it was just like a little whoa. After that, there should be a period of time that is more low-level activity. So am I going to want to put this kid in a cold, dark room with their phone to play with? Absolutely not. May they need a small period of time of avoiding bright lights and high-intensity activity that's too metabolic? Absolutely. Is what they put in their stomach at that period of time important? Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're giving them healthy, nutritious things. I think bone broth is probably the best thing for them.
That makes
Easy
sense.
to digest, heavy in minerals, more related to fat depending on what you use to cook the broth. Brain food, if you may, right? That's going to be really important. And then after that, we need to see how quickly can we get you back into activating. Because I think for a long period of time, we thought that people needed to be in a cold, dark room
Yeah.
for weeks to an end. No, that's actually not great at all.
Okay.
We want to shorten the amount of time that you need to have no stimulation. And then it's not like I'm going to put you out there into play or anything again, but we want to do certain therapies and things to make sure that your brain is starting to, adapt appropriately. And working with a professional that understands that is so important, because I know how much I can push you. I know that after this, you're probably going to go home, take a nap, do these things. And so working with a professional that understands those nuances is important, because those first few days after the injury are very important. Not that the latter ones aren't. It's not like, oh, well, mine was 17 years ago. I don't know what I can do, which I have lots of patients like that. Like, my concussion was 20 years ago. How's that going to affect me now? We still work with that. But if it's fresh off the boat, you have things that you need to be doing, and definitely not in a cold, dark room for ends and ends of time.
We've all grown up, hearing, little kids, their skulls are soft.
Yeah.
A baby is born with a soft spot in its head. Little kid falls down, bonks his head, no problem. Is that, there's no way that's true, right? You got to keep an eye on your little ones, but maybe not be, overly a helicopter parent, hovering too closely.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be a helicopter parent. Keep in mind, kids aren't very tall, so if they fall, there's not that much.
And they're not real fast.
No,
Yeah.
there's not that much. Now, don't get me wrong, shaken baby syndrome is actually something.
Yes.
A kid falling from here to there is definitely something. But kids are more resilient, and they also have developing brains. So if they're doing their landmarks, if they're getting proper nutrition, if you see them that they're, crawling when they're supposed to crawl, talking when they're supposed to talk, and helping them and encouraging them, like, not sitting them in front of a TV for 3 hours because you need them to shut up, but actually being like, oh, let's play with this food, and that's the texture,
Let's
or
go
like
for a hike.
grass.
Yeah.
That's all therapeutic for baby, and baby's brains, can't really lose a brain cell if it's not there yet. So the brain development will continue.
So the panic for new parents maybe can be tamped down there a little bit in terms of all of those things. If we've got, wrapping up here, if we've got people out there who aren't sure if they've had a concussion, right? But they're thinking back to, well, I got in a car accident. They asked me if I was okay. When the EMTs came to the car, I said I was fine. I'm going to, no ambulance ride, whatever. But then I went home, and I got a headache. Then maybe I was sensitive to light. Then maybe I got nauseous. Maybe I even threw up. What are the other types of symptoms they should be looking for, thinking of? What are we keeping our eye on before we go, I gotta dial in Dr. Michelle and go have a discussion with her and see if I need to get looked at?
Major ones are going to be ones that we've already spoken about real quick, other than sleep, balance, dizziness, heart rate. It's going to be gut issues for sure. I think people start developing kind of food intolerances, and they're like, I can't eat the way I used to. This is really bothering me. Thyroid problems, just hormone in general, men struggling with testosterone levels, or women struggling with estrogen or too much testosterone, irritability, especially being in crowded places, sensitivity to light, sound, or smell. So there is a myriad of symptoms. I know that we do offer 15-minute free consults on the phone.
Awesome.
So I can kind of pinpoint out real quick yes or no. But if there is someone really wondering, like, do I struggle with this, I think the best thing is just always try to rule it out. I mean, how are you going to know if you don't know? So just call, make an appointment, rule something out.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to keep you if you don't need to be there.
What's the harm in making sure?
Yeah. I mean, I have told people, like, I think you're fine.
Really?
I think you're good.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was one woman that had listeria, and she had
What's listeria?
oh my gosh, it was like a spinal cord infection.
Wow.
So it's like a brain infection. And so she had a concussion. She fell. She was unconscious for a few days. Her kids thought that she, her kids thought, yeah, her kids thought that she had, gone on a trip with a flight attendant friend. Turns out she was at the house. She came in struggling with some stuff. And we said, well, we obviously her history showed as if, she's going to be a mess. So we did all of our testing. We did everything so great. Granted, she had worked on herself quite a bit, had cleared the infection completely, had done a lot of stuff, and it seemed like her brain really did adapt. So that was a great confirmation for her that the things that she was doing were actually being good. So it really is. I mean, I've had people that we have to do more intensive therapies. I've had people that it's been more of some in therapy clinic and a lot home management. So you just don't know until you know.
Is your opinion about the effects that marijuana has on the brain similar to your effects on your opinions on the effects alcohol has on the brain? Just it's not going to help you
I think
perform better, or what do you think? What do you think about marijuana?
I don't like marijuana for developing brains.
Okay, so young people.
Yeah, I don't like it for developing brains because I do think it cuts blood flow to the brain, and developing brains need blood flow because how are you going to develop the thing you don't have if you don't got the nutrients to build it?
Sure.
But, if you already have a well-developed brain and it's going down the road, the only other issue I can think of is if you have there's an area of the brain that's a stop and go mechanism, and it's called the basal ganglia. So we all know that marijuana deals a lot with dopamine. And so if you have an excess of dopamine, do I want to give you more dopamine? I'm not sure. That's going to be the best thing for you.
Yeah.
However, so it really does depend per person. After brain's developed, you do your thing recreationally. I don't have any other kind of thought process about it. I know some people that it's been life-saving for, and my stance on if you're in that cusp, you got to do what is going to help you move the needle so you don't make a mistake. So that's where I stand with it. I just don't love it for developing brains.
The same question for psychedelics. You mentioned it's starting to become much more mainstream. I think it was it on The Economist or Forbes?
Oh my gosh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, saying that he said psilocybin and ibogaine and possibly MDMA are going to be in medicine cabinets very soon. Obviously, the FDA is doing
it certainly sounds
test.
like it is. I'm not in mental health. Because what I do is functional performance, I feel like a lot of the times they get mixed together, but I know of it. And so I do think that for some people it can be very beneficial. I like the fact that some of those substances are showing neurogenesis, like new brain cell development.
That's crazy, right?
Which is awesome. Now, do I think any of that should be done without the help or assistance of a knowledgeable person? Probably not. Please don't do it at home by yourself recreationally because, again, every person has their own past, and we just don't know what the past is going to bring to remind us. And so those are moments that I'm like, I'm not sure. So, and you don't want to, if whatever you're going to do, you want to work with someone that understands appropriate dosing because you don't want to fall into a hole as well and be alone that you can't get out and no one's there to tell you you're okay,
Sure.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you had some of I know you've got doctor-patient privilege, but have you had vets, military folks who have microdosed and things like that, who it's helped their mood and their
I know of
brain makeup?
people.
Yeah.
I know that there is another podcaster. Her name is Kelsey Sharon. She owns Brass and Unity. You would really love her.
Okay.
Y'all should definitely talk. But she's very
Please
open
connect
about.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very open about psychedelics and what that's done for her. And she's done many trips with ayahuasca and, how that's helped her personal journey. And she talks a lot about it. So have I seen benefit from people? Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen people benefit from it. But then again, that's life and healing, right? It's a journey.
Yeah.
And so each person, I feel like, gets to those places when they need to or when they want to.
It's not, let's all go do this now.
Correct. So for what one person was great may not be for you. And so, and to an extent, you don't really know until you try. I'm still not a fan of try everything because you don't want to do that either.
Let's maybe stay away from fentanyl.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
let's leave that one alone. If you were going to leave our podcast listeners and viewers with one brain health hack before we sign off, can you leave us with something we haven't talked about or reinforce something we already have talked about?
Yeah, I think that changing your mindset to everything you do being intentional, because that can apply to everything. Sleep, nutrition, movement, doctor's visits, goals. Like, if what you're doing has an intention behind it, you're going to be able to get a lot out of it because you're actually focused on what you want the result and the outcome to be. And so you're going to continue finding ways to achieve it. And it's going to take you through those paths to this work, that didn't work, and refining until you get there.
That's
Whereas,
awesome.
like, if you do everything kind of willy-nilly and you don't really have a plan or at least an intention on this is what I want and that's what I'm going to pursue right now with my health goals, that's where I see people kind of get anxiety and not really know where to go, who to talk to, what to do. So
Without a vision, the people perish. It says that somewhere in the scriptures, I believe. You gotta know where you want to go. People want to reach out to you
real
to talk
quick.
to you. Yes.
Real quick,
Yes,
speaking of
sir.
dopamine, we love dogs here. Is this your dog?
that's my dog.
Oh,
Yes, she's the best thing
what's
in the
her
world.
name?
Aria.
Oh my gosh.
She's,
Look at this.
yeah, she knows how to do the tricks.
That's awesome. Oh.
I love her so much.
Did you name her after Arya Stark on House of Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
You did?
Yes, I
Heck
have
yeah.
some feelings about that show because of the last season,
Man,
but
the
that was
last-
before the last season, so
The last season really hurt my feelings.
it really. I haven't even started watching House of the Dragon because of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're gonna save your screen time for something, you might spend it on
Spend it
something
on
different.
something else,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm a huge fan. It's all just kind of a bummer now. What breed is she?
She's an Aussie Doodle.
An Aussie. Man,
So
everything's a
cute.
doodle
I
these
I
days.
know. So we just happened to be walking by a place because we were trying to look for things for our apartment.
Yeah.
Decor-wise, because they had a lot of vendors, and there was this family that she was a nurse, and she had her kids with her, and she had a litter of puppies, and I was like, "That's coming home with me. I just can't." And so, yeah. So she's the
Dogs are
best
the
decision I've
best.
ever made.
Ever? Whoa.
Ever made.
Whoa.
She's the. I mean,
Mr. Dr. Michelle might be a little disappointed to hear about that.
well, it's unconditional love.
I know, dogs
I mean,
are
you
the
go
shit.
home and you could have been gone like a million hours, and they're like, "I'm so glad you're back."
Or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I
or
go
30
repark the
seconds.
truck and come back in, and my dog's like, "Oh my god, I've been
Yeah.
waiting for you for 30
Forever.
fucking seconds, dude." If
Also,
yes,
Paul sent this. He wanted you to watch this. I think you'll think it's
Paul's a
cool.
member of our team.
Can you read that?
Man,
It says birds are fed by their parents in their infancy. When the time comes to feed themselves, there can be some confusion when the food does not go into their mouth by itself. I think there's something philosophical in that.
the bird's waiting to be fed, and the food's walking
That's-
right across its
yeah.
face. That's funny.
Yeah.
Got to be intentional about getting that protein, man.
Man, he's really trying to figure it out. He's really.
It's right there, dude.
He's
Go for
really
it.
trying.
They don't have to put it in your mouth, man. You got it.
Yeah. That's funny.
That is hilarious.
But yeah, you can give the plugs now.
When our viewers or listeners want to reach out to you, how should they reach out to you? And if they want to make an appointment to come meet you and talk to you and have you give them the once over, how should they reach out to you?
So our clinic website is called resiliencybh.com. I am in love with that website because there are so many resources on there. There's articles, there's videos that we've made.
True story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I perused it at length. Where's your clinic located?
It's in Coppell, Old
Yeah.
Town Coppell.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of places to eat nearby. There's a lot of places to walk nearby. The loveliest coffee shop that my boss will probably laugh at because I'm obsessed with it nearby. But I love our website because the contact form is the easiest way. I mean, we look at that immediately and it gives you an opportunity kind of to think about it and look at our services too and kind of familiarize yourself with what do these people look like? What are these
Sure.
things that they're offering? So we did that website with the intention of giving as much as we can to people so that they come in knowing who we are.
Yeah.
And then secondly, we do have an Instagram, so resilienccbh.com, not .com, resilienccbh. And then I have obviously my Instagram, the Brainfluencer, which you've mentioned before.
Yes.
But I think that to become a patient, definitely our clinic website is the best way to get in contact. But if you want to support me individually, then follow the
Give
page.
her a follow.
Yeah.
Dr. Michelle, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
I appreciate you. You were awesome. That was awesome, Dr. Michelle. Wow. A lot of energy, a lot of information, just great charisma, too. Just a really awesome, fascinating podcast to me, obviously to Sohail, my producer, as well. A lot of really on-point topical stuff there for me. I'm going to probably go visit her in the next couple of weeks, set up an appointment for myself. You should, too. Go to resilienccbh.com. That's her clinic over there in Coppell, Texas. Follow Dr. Michelle at The Brainfluencer. You'll see her tagged all in my social media as well. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the JESS MARSHALL Podcast. Hope you enjoy them all, obviously. Love to know what you think. Drop a comment below. Please like, subscribe. And if you have a recommendation of someone who lives a fearless DIY lifestyle, I'd like to talk to them. Reach out to me. Hit me on Instagram or TikTok. I'm at Jess from the Northwest. DM me their name, connect me. I'll shoot you my cell. We can connect on text, whatever. I like talking to those types of passionate people. Hope you enjoyed this week's round. See you guys next time.